Hi, Embracing Only podcast family. This is Archita. We are introducing impact moments, actionable insights that highlight the best and powerful learning moments and wisdom from our past episodes of incredible guests. In this highlight reel, you'll hear leadership lessons from a combat veteran, taking action to be anti-racist, mastering workplace negotiations, leveraging your uniqueness for success. We'll take a topic and break it down in a short, snappy episode. So click on the link in the show notes to continue listening to these impact moments with our amazing guests. I know for a fact that our listeners on here who are like, well, but I'm comfortable now. My team is better. I have a better manager. I'm going to be okay because I had a good performance review. But we just went through like a whole slew of layoffs. I'm going to be fine. And then 2 weeks later in my DMs on LinkedIn, they're like, oh, Archita, guess what happened? So don't wait before the last straw drops or whatever the last thing drops. Prepare ahead of time to go in to the battlefield for yourself. Because as I learned through my own experience of bullying and harassment, my mom told me this when I called her bawling and crying. Oh, I can't believe all of this is happening. I felt like the world was against me, right? And she was like, your company owes you nothing. I believed that. I drank the Kool-Aid because I was just like, I'm giving so much of myself and I'm on this ERG and I'm on this extra, whatever, all of this jazz. Of course, the company cares. And of course, the company is scared and did amazing things for me over the years. Don't get me wrong. But the company owes me nothing. And so this whole concept of, I used to be a leader, used to say this, but we are a family. Help us deconstruct that a little bit because work is not family. And I've seen some posts out there a little bit, but people still get sucked into this. How do we recognize work is not family and how we got to disassociate?
Oh, I struggle with that analogy because I've bought into it over the years and then I bought out of it. I don't fire my family. I don't lay them off. I just don't. We're in it through thick and thin. So we have our ups and downs, but it's family. And so I don't understand how that analogy holds in a capitalistic society where you're for profit and it is about revenue. And guess what? I don't care what you're doing. You are selling something. We're all selling something if you work for an organization. And if you're not selling enough of it, you've got to control costs. So I respect that as a business person. Yes. You have to control costs and you have to make hard choices. Many of us have had to do that this year, but that's not family then. So we need to find another analogy for it. I don't believe the family analogy works. And I think it can be really harmful and hurtful when you've set up a situation where people think they're part of a family and then the family actually exiles you or asks you to go find another family.
Okay, so it's going to be a popular opinion. And I think this is because now this might be a little bit of the HR leader in me, but it might be a little bit of the military leader in me as well, Mita. Because I do think everything you agreed with, you said, I don't disagree with. At some point in time, you lose a family member because the business cannot sustain it and you have to cut heads for whatever reason. In our own families, we also have the weird uncle that no one really likes, that everyone talks crap about and wishes we could fire. They hang out anyways, and you do your best to not be disrespectful and tolerate them, right? But I think it's, when we say family, at least from an HR perspective, I have this core belief that as a leader, if you don't love your people, you need to go do something else. And here's what I mean by this. I think excluding firing for a second here, when you love your people, you do everything from a place of love. You include them because you love them and you want their voices to be heard. You give them development conversations that may make you uncomfortable, but it's a gift to them to know where their gaps are so that they can develop and move on to the next level. Or if they're misaligned to role, giving them that feedback early so they're not working themselves into a tizzy in a direction that's never going to pan out for them, right? Having some of those tough conversations with love so that people understand exactly where they sit in the organization. So there is this little concept of family and how we treat each other while you're employed here that I tend to still embrace. But it's like the balance here is just because we're saying we're family at work, don't let this mislead you into thinking you will never be fired. We are all expendable.
So that's where I think, especially if you're early in your career, the word family can be weaponized.
Yes.
Right. And so that's if you work on my team, I'm on your team, you're part of my community. But do I love you as much as my brother or my kids or husband? It's different relationships. And so expectations are set. And then people think, but I thought I was part of this family and now you're firing me or you're letting me go or so that's where I think we have to be careful. And I do appreciate and respect what you said, because I do think your number one job as a leader is to create more leaders. And if you actually don't love coaching people, then you shouldn't be doing that respectfully. And there's many things to be doing in this world, right? So I understand that.
Yes, I respect that, but I will say that I can really take care of my team. I can protect my team. I can create a safe environment for my team, but don't buy into this disillusionment. I have had friends who were on my bridesmaid, but that's a completely separate relationship that does not, is unencumbered by the minutia of the madness of we're one big happy family.
I had a mentor said to me years ago, Sherry, if you're listening, Sherry, she had said to me, Mita, if you die tomorrow, they're going to send a basket of flowers to your family and that's it. And that to me was like, wow. So that is a fact when I think about that family analogy, right? And what relationships and who's going to be there for you in some of the toughest times of your life. So
yes.
Good.
Absolutely. I would ask this question before we move on, because I know, Archita, you're getting ready to move on. Is this a two-part problem then, as I'm listening to you ladies? Is it part of, hey, corporations, stop using this language? Or is it up to us to be smarter to understand what it means?
Well, I think there's two things happening. I think that leaders want to use that language because we rally around it to create community. We haven't found other language. So I appreciated the intent of what you said. The impact lands differently for people, but the intent is, hey, we want people to feel excited to be here and know that their leaders care about them. So they lock their potential and it's unlocked for the company. And then I think with the employee side, and it's really interesting, I talk about the Edelman Trust Barometer survey a lot. I mention it in my book. Mm-hmm. And I think what's also happening is that when there's a loss of trust that people are feeling in government, no matter what side you're on, people are feeling lonely post the pandemic. Their ties to communities are being cut. They're worshiping less. They show up at work and they expect a lot of their employer. So they almost expect the employer to fill in for family. And so that's really interesting too, right? And you think Generation Z, and I think this is across generations, but certainly Generation Z statistically entering the workforce has said, I want to work for an employer that matches my values, what I believe. And so I think all of these things are coming to a head when we think about why the family analogy exists and how there's starting to have some cracks in that language.
Really love that. And that's so nuanced. We say in marketing, it depends. The answer is not black or white. It depends, which is true. And I think it's a nuanced way to look at it. And you're actually giving me a lot of food for thought here.